Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Your host is Debra, CEO of Rue Global Impact and co-founder and chairwoman of Billion Strong, an identity and empowerment organization designed to bring billions of voices of persons with disabilities together. To join the global community and to donate to the cause, visit billion-strong.org. That's billion-strong.org. And now, on to the episode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Debra Rue, and I am the host of Human Potential at Work. I'm also the co-host of Access Chat. And today, one of my other hosts, Neil Charles Milliken, is he's joining me, and he's been on the show multiple times. A good friend of mine. I think he's one of the most brilliant people in our industry. I think he's very innovative. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I, as a reminder, am the founder and the CEO of Rue Global Impact, and Rue Global Impact works with corporations all over the world, helping them meaningfully include people with disabilities and making sure that technology is accessible to everyone. But also very proud to be part of Billion Strong, co-founding Billion Strong. And Neil has agreed to be one of our board members, and we really appreciate that. And a quick visual description: I'm a mature woman. I'm not saying old anymore, Neil, with gray and purple hair. And today I have brown glasses, and I have on a summery purple and green dress, since it's very summery. So speaking of how summery it is, Neil, how's the weather over there in the UK?
It's warm, thank you, Debra. And
Very warm.
Yeah. So it's 32 degrees centigrade, roughly in the 90s Fahrenheit.
I'm learning.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you, Debra. Thank you for the compliments. Less thank yous for using my middle name to the world. I feel like I've been naughty, because the only time it ever
Neil
gets used
Charles?
was when I've done something.
Neil
Yes,
Charles,
exactly.
what have you gotten into? Yes.
Exactly. So thank you for that. Ensuring the highest standards of professionalism. So I'm wearing a green top, stubbly, looking a bit like Tintin, who's aged terribly. So that's me. I'm here with you and delighted to talk to you about what we're doing across multiple angles of accessibility.
Yeah, because I know that you've been on the show before, and I know that I've also featured some of your team members, but I am fascinated about how you are running the accessibility team at Atos. I really am, because you are doing it differently from what I'm seeing others do. And so I'm very intrigued, and I feel it's very innovative as well, what you're doing. But Neil, let's start by telling maybe the audience who Atos is, because not everybody might have a name
Sure.
recognition of who Atos is.
Okay, well, we're a large multinational digital transformation organization. We are European headquartered in Paris, France, but we have operations in 70 odd countries, and we have 112,000 employees across those different territories, including, at least 10,000 in North America. So we're definitely present in North America, and headquartered in Irving, Texas, just outside of Dallas. So, but yeah, we're around. We deliver all kinds of different services, from landing space probes on comets for the European Space Agency to doing the IT for the Olympics and the Paralympics, to building quantum computers and supercomputers, etc., to the more seemingly mundane but really important day-to-day stuff of delivering people's work experience. So, we're top right of the Gartner Magic Quadrant for digital workplace services and stuff like that. And to a certain extent, the team that I have brought together, a lot of those people sit within that sort of digital workplace space. So that's where they're located. They do lots of other things, but essentially, that's where the sort of rubber hits the road in terms of humans and IT for the most part. And accessibility is about humans and IT.
I agree.
So there you go.
I have
You
another
sort of
question.
asked about our
Yeah.
different angle. Yeah, go on.
I have a question before you leave that point,
Mhm.
because I know the answer, but in case somebody else doesn't know the answer. So, what you and your team do for this multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation with many moving parts is you just make sure everything's accessible inside the company, or do you offer accessibility services to your clients also, or is it both?
It's both.
I-
So we have a sort of split. I have a dual role. So I'm essentially responsible for our program and our policies, which is the internal stuff, and then also for our practice, which is the bit that sits in the sort of workplace space, which delivers those services both back into Atos as a customer and to the Atos customer base. Um, so really, what we try and do is eat our own dog food and be the exemplar for our, of what we can do in terms of accessibility. So in terms of, supporting our own employees, developing programs, delivering assistive technology support and services and wraparound services on that, and then actually recognizing that accessibility and the needs of disability can be used for triggers for innovation. So we do get involved in quite a lot of sort of innovation initiatives, and various members of our group and my team are members of our corporate think tank, which is called the Scientific Community, and our expert community as well. So we're not the biggest accessibility team in our in our universe. There are bigger IT players than us, because once you get into big IT, there are companies with 300, 400,000 employees, and
Millions.
yeah, absolutely. But we're sizable, and we have a team of around 35, 40 people globally. But those people are maybe not quite the sort of profile that are in quite a lot of these other companies that employ lots of
Right.
accessibility testers. So we do accessibility audits. We do have those capabilities within our team, but that's not the majority of the work that we do, because
Right.
actually, as our mutual friend Gareth Ford Williams points out, that's the wrong end of the process. If you're auditing, it's already too late.
Right. I agree.
So a lot of the stuff that we do is looking at how we can bring about systemic change, and how we can work with organizations to support them doing that, and understand processes and their internal politics of maturity and everything else, and the cultural piece. So yeah, we've got a bunch of really bright and brilliant people.
I agree.
I'm pleased to say that support that have a complementary range of skills. So we do have deep accessibility expertise, but not just in web content accessibility guidelines, but things like HR processes, UX design,
Simple
and then also
language,
language
cultural
accessibility,
differences.
neurodiversity, all of this kind of stuff. And then also people like Ricardo, who have done an awful lot of work on organizational maturity. So
Right.
I mean,
Around the world.
yeah, globally. So it's really sort of that piece and the work that we're doing and how we conceptualize it that I think is what makes a difference. So we treat accessibility as a key strategic topic. So to sort of give a view of where it sits in the organization, I've already said it sits in two places, but in terms of the leadership, it sits at sort of just below the top management of the organization. We report into the board on a regular basis on this stuff, so it has that high level of accountability and visibility within the organization, and then we treat it and we structure the governance around it in a very similar way to one of the other things that we're successful with. Because what I think that the challenge for me was, how do I get this to be accepted in an organization that is extremely complex, multinational, multi-language, multicultural, multiple silos. You really need a framework, and if you're going to invent a framework, it's going to take you an awful long time for that to be adopted or understood, and there's always going to be pushback. So one of the things that Atos has done really, really well for a very long time was around sustainability. So before it became popular, or I mean, it's been urgent for a long time, but before it became recognized as being an urgent strategic topic for businesses, Atos had been doing it. The previous CEO, who's now the European Commissioner, Thierry Breton, had seen that this was a strategic topic, and we'd made commitments to decarbonisation and waste and energy reduction a long time ago. So we're well recognized and have got some structure around this. So when I went to a conference in 2016, I at Funke, I heard a speech by Jim Tobias where he said, well, inaccessibility is kind of like pollution, and he gave a pitch, and I thought this was great, and I had numerous conversations with Jim before he went off into political protest, because he decided that was where his energy needed to be spent, and so I took up the torch on this one, and I started thinking quite hard about how we could turn what was a concept into something that was tangible. So we understood the concept of externalities, and they're both good and bad. So you have negative externalities in terms of pollution and smog, but also positive ones like a curb cut. And we're dealing with negative externalities already in terms of our sustainability initiatives, and we have a framework for that and a governance for that and a structure within the organization. So what I decided to do was make that real and take the S and the G of ESG, which is the social, which accessibility and disability inclusion is definitely a social topic, and it's social good, and it's aligned with the SDGs, therefore sustainable. But also, in order for all of this to work, you need good governance. You could be technically excellent, but if you don't have the processes, you don't have the buy-in, you don't have all of the sort of machinery of the business working, then it falls apart. So we built the governance structure of what we're doing around accessibility in a way that pretty much mirrors how we govern decarbonisation and our sustainability topics, and actually work in the organisation of our CSR lead, who owns sustainability as well as accessibility, and she's on our board. So by doing that, we already had a structure that the organisation understood, and we can borrow from that to enable us to roll out the program globally. So we have, as I said, a relatively small team of 35, 40 people. At the same time, those are the permanent members, and then we have hundreds of SPOCs across the business. So the SPOCs are responsible for accessibility and being the point of contact. So SPOC is a single point of contact, and those are the people that are pushing the topic, not as experts, but as the person responsible within that area of business. And we've got them across all of the different areas of business, whether that be from sales, partnerships, procurement, HR, portfolio, quality management, learning and development, etc. So each of the areas of the business has something that impacts disability inclusion, and what we're trying to do is reduce the exclusion, and therefore, again, using the analogy of pollution, reduce the pollution of inaccessibility. Right. So that's how we're addressing it within the organization, and
which is pretty amazing.
I think
I have a
It's a strategic view.
and I have a
Go
hard
on.
question for you. Maybe it's not hard, but I've heard many corporations, especially here in the United States, multinational um, corporations saying that they don't always have confidence in the accessibility industries, the small, company. I mean, we do accessibility consulting at Rue Global, but there's also other groups that do it a lot more than we do now. And because like y'all, we're also focused on other things, but I've had multiple brands tell me that they think often the accessibility vendors do not understand the complexity of these gigantic multinational organizations. The complexity, it is just, and so you just sort of talked about some of that complexity quite a bit. You just rolled off what you've done and did it. But as you were saying all that stuff, Neil, I know that all those things that you talk about, y'all have been working on for years. So I was just curious from your perspective of somebody that's leading a big accessibility, disability inclusion team for a gigantic organization. First of all, do you agree with what I'm hearing that sometimes the community, the accessibility vendors, they don't really understand the complexity of what you're living with? And do you think there is a value to those gigantic corporations trying to get all the moving parts right to work with someone like Atos, since you are also a big, gigantic company? And I know I'm sort of lobbing the ball to you, but at the same time, it's true though, Neil, because it's easy for I was just talking to somebody that I'm not going to mention, and they were saying, "Oh, well, what the companies need to do, they just need to go and hire people with disabilities and they need to." And I was listening to them and I thought, "Okay. They know that.
Okay.
They know that. What they need is, programs in place." And so I was just wondering if you would take that question on. I know in some ways it's unfair because you do offer
No, no, it's
accessibility
not.
as a service around the world, but I also want to ask you um, uh, an additional part of that, in that one thing that I saw, we used to work a lot with IBM when Francis West was the chief accessibility officer. And one thing they would do, and they were so strong at IBM at offering accessibility services, I perceived maybe a lot of that went away, and maybe I'm wrong, and I just don't know the people that are doing it. But one thing that they also were doing, which I assume you are, is every time they would put out some kind of project or a bid, or they would finish a proposal, there was assumed that the accessibility would be built into that. So the team also made sure that just on all the regular big technology projects they were doing, those were also accessible. Okay, where
So,
you go.
okay.
Multi
Wow.
world
Okay,
problems,
right. So that's
please.
about six. Right. So, firstly, I think there are some amazing experts in these accessibility
Agree.
consultancies that have deep technical knowledge about accessibility. Where that falls over is in the understanding of the complexity of massive organizations and uh, the sheer dependencies on other things that impact projects. So if we were to take your example of just employ more disabled people, yes, we do know that we want to employ. We have a clear ambition to be an employer of choice for people with disabilities around the world. But in order to do that, you have to put all sorts of things in place. You need to educate managers. You need to look at your onboarding systems. You need to look at your HR management systems, which you may have a multi-year contract on. You can't just switch it on and off. You've got 65 different languages to make it accessible in. You've got different legislation around the world that you also have to comply with. So yes, we want to do this, and yes, all of these organizations are actively working towards it. But where I think the expertise and the consultancies often don't deliver to promise, or are misaligned with large organizations, is that they can point at a single application, they can point at a process, but they don't understand the sort of all of the other things that are meshed behind it that may impact the ability to deliver that. So I think that where organizations that are large systems integrators that understand accessibility, and we're one of them, and certainly I know that under Francis, IBM were another, then you've got the understanding of dealing with those complex moving parts. You also got the understanding that you don't always own the stuff that you need to make accessible. So you're doing this at arm's length. So you're then having to influence the owners of the products or the manufacturers as well, because it's very easy if you're making your own product
Right.
to say it must be accessible. You can teach your people and change your processes. But when you're integrating lots of other people's complex systems, you're relying on them to do that, and you're relying on having influence with them or working together collaboratively with lots of their customers to make it important enough and high enough up on their radar for it suddenly to become important. So a good example would be, SAP, right? Lots of people complain bitterly about the accessibility of SAP products, but they put in a significant
Yes.
effort and recruitment drive around bringing on accessibility expertise over the last 6-7
They were
years.
good about it
Some
too.
of that was, yeah. Oh yeah, but I mean, but after the book, they actually accelerated the amount of recruitment that they've done and everything else, and it's got better, but it's not quick,
No.
because this is like an oil tanker. We're people in my role or Nicole Winman's role at SAP. We're the tugboats, right? We can turn around the oil tanker, but it doesn't happen. You're not going to pivot on a sixpence. It's a long-term thing that we can make substantive differences. But Nicole will tell you that the approaches that we made to her using the collective power of organizations like the Business Disability Forum and the letters we wrote with so that we, the undersigned, empowered her to go to management and get resources, because actually she could then point out that actually customers do want this stuff. So there is an awful lot of that kind of long-term brokerage and negotiation that takes place in large organizations for the programs that we run, both for ourselves and for our customers, that I don't think are really necessarily understood outside of large organizations. And sometimes we get stick for that because we're not changing fast enough. And let's face it, we all want to go faster. There's always greater ambition. The corporate accessibility warriors will put on their professional face and tell you about all of the good things we do, which we are, but we all want to go faster too, and we all, in any organization, rail against the machine sometimes.
Absolutely.
But that's corporate
It
life. So I hope I've done given a
I
fair
think you did a very. I thought you did a very.
assessment.
It was.
Right.
It was not a fair question because it's sort of a conflict of interest question. But I thought you did a really good job answering it. But where I'd like to go now, Neil, I really want to talk, because one thing, once again, and I said it earlier, you fascinate me anyway, and I know you're my friend, and I appreciate you. But who you're hiring is different from I see other people hiring. And so I know you have a team of 35 or 40, but I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind, just let's talk about this a little bit. I think of the woman that you hired, and I'm going to forget which country she is, but she's a scientist and a doctor, and it's
Oh no. So you're thinking
thank
of
you.
Alexandra. So she's a Marie Curie alumni. She is a biologist by training. She's autistic, and
Brilliant,
I
amazing,
yeah, utterly. But I mean,
innovative.
so I mean, so I wrote a begging letter to my boss to allow him to let me employ her. Which I don't often write begging letters to my boss, but in this particular case, when I really try and find unconventional
Yes.
talent.
Yes.
I really believe in it. I'm neurodivergent myself. I'm dyslexic. I'm ADHD. I've always been a little bit different,
Me too.
and have appreciated the perspectives of people that are also different. Now, I know a lot of accessibility consultancies employ people with disabilities, and we are all different from able people, but in the respect that I'm also taking people from different backgrounds as well. And I think that, yes, yes, we have technical experts. We've got some really good technical experts, but we've also got people that are creative thinkers. I'm actually an arts major by background. I've got Antonio Santos, who's a sociologist by background, working in my team doing the sort of accessibility comms side of things, and sort of the social media and outreach work. And he's certainly not someone that you would normally
No,
see
he's
in an
amazing.
accessibility team.
He thinks very differently.
Yeah, again, so I mean, I value that diversity of thought. Doesn't make for easy meetings or reaching consensus,
That's right.
but
Everybody's got an opinion.
but absolutely. But at the same time, it does mean that we've got some great ideas, and we're able to really sort of find solutions to thorny problems. And whether that be in the design of our program, or the stuff we're doing, the programs we're running with GIZ in Africa and India and so on, or the work that Christina Papadimitriou has been doing on integrating sign language into Teams and stuff like that with Signly. I like people that have bright and crazy ideas that are a little bit unusual. So I'm quite happy to act a bit like a life raft, or the Pied Piper of weird and wonderful people within the organization. I stress the wonderful as well as the weird.
I'm happy to be
right?
weird and wonderful. So yeah. But
Yeah.
so you also, though, did something that I was intrigued with, because often I see with the accessibility teams, most of the people seem to be culturally very, very the same. And I understand why that happens, but you have not taken that easy path.
No,
Yeah, you have not done that.
no,
So let's talk about some of the
no, we haven't.
cultural diversity and why in the world would that be important? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're a multinational organization, so therefore, we need to have that kind of cultural understanding. And the way that, yeah, we've got people in Iberia, we've got people in Greece, India, Ireland,
Spain.
Portugal, Spain, Germany.
Sure, we're leaving somebody
Yeah.
out.
So,
Paris,
no, yeah. So
England,
I mean,
Portugal. Did we say
yeah. We've got
Portugal?
plenty.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. But the point being is that I value that diversity of thought, and I also think that one of the things that annoyed me about accessibility was the homogeneity of some of the accessibility industry. And when I was actively contributing to the W3C, and I was part of the cognitive accessibility task force, I actually felt that it was fairly hostile to people that didn't fit into that homogenous group. And I spent my last 2 decades serving that group, but I also think there are other underserved groups that need recognition. And so what I've tried to do is actually build up a more representative team. And to be representative, that means we've got to have people that are heterogeneous, not homogeneous. And that's why we have that real diversity amongst the team, and I value that.
You have an amazing team, and I just have to say, just my opinion, Jim Smith wins the best accent award, but just my opinion, and that probably doesn't matter as much. No, but I love his Love his accent. But I know that I promised to only keep you on 30 minutes, and I can tell by the clock here that I'm about to break that. But Neil, will you tell people how they can learn more about what Atos is doing with accessibility? How can they get hold of you? Of course, please, everybody, join us on Access Chat every Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the United States, 8 o'clock in the UK. And there's a lot. It's really going to be hard not to find Neil. But Neil, still tell us how to find you. You can always come to me too, and I'll send you to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can Google me, you'll find me fairly quickly. But I'm usually on Twitter and LinkedIn. They're my two social networks of choice, where I sort of cart my professional wares. If you go find me on Instagram, it'll all be flowers and gardening, because that's what I do with my downtime. So my Twitter handle is at Neil Milliken. It's easy to find. But do search for the hashtag Access Chat. It's AXSCHAT, accesschat.com. You'll find hundreds of video interviews starring me and Debra. Actually, we're not the stars. The stars are the guests on the show.
We're just there to harass the stars. So
yeah, and then the other areas where we're engaged, obviously, Billion Strong, Valuable 500, you can find and Google for them.
My Purple Space, I know.
Genius Within, Genius Within, where I'm proud to be the chair of that amazing organization, and they're WID.org, and then actually my employer, because the biggest plug should go to them. So it is atos.net/IUX.
Cool.
IUX, yeah, IUX is inclusive.
And I
user
will also
experience.
say to the audience, if you appreciate what Atos is doing, go out there and tag them and tell them that. Best thing you can do is tell them they're doing a good job, because that helps Neil do more. So, and they're really good about letting Neil go out and talk and do speeches and things like that. So him and his team. So I do appreciate Atos. And Atos hasn't always gotten it right with our community, but they sure are trying, and that I'm grateful for. So Neil, thank you. Thank you and your amazing team.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. Well, I mean, they do a lot of the work.
I know. And they're
yeah. And they do great work, and I'm very proud of I'm very proud of the team that do it. I mean, we haven't even talked about Mark Wilcox.
I know, and I was going to mention
the last
Mark
time we
in
came
the
on.
apprentice program.
And yeah, so yeah, we let's just revisit that for a second. This is an area where we're really particularly proud, where we led the work on creating the digital accessibility specialist apprenticeship standard in the UK. That scheme is now going live. There is an education provider, so anyone in the UK, any company in the UK can now apply for an apprenticeship, and they can put these young people. They don't all have to be young, but people can apply, and they can get structured mixture of blended on the job and academic learning that will give them the knowledge and the skills that they need to be a really rounded accessibility professional, far better technically than me, but these are skills that the industry is lacking. And what we're seeing in the industry at the moment is a lot of movement, and I think it's great, because we're seeing people like Rob Sinclair pop up back into the industry, which is great to have Rob back. But we're also seeing lots of other people move to be in accessibility roles that companies that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So you see Megan Lawrence go to Nike, and my old pal Denise Reed Lamoureux, who was my peer at Atos, now at Zillow. So she's doing diversity, but she's taking on the accessibility elements,
and we love Zillow.
So on. So there's this big movement, but what we hadn't seen is new talent coming in, and new talent that has the depth of knowledge to be competent as well. Because I mean, this is the thing. This was the rationale behind the IAAP, which we're members of. We contributed to. It had some some missteps along the way, but and some detractors amongst the community. But I think that actually that opinion of them has changed over time. The detractors have seen the response to how they're dealing with their sort of code of ethics and their approach to things like overlays, and it's very measured. It's very well done. Actually, it took time, but actually, you know what? Take time, do good quality, and that's the message that I would like to leave it with. Is actually, this is about quality. It's not about speed.
I agree, and I'll also say, this is about people.
Yeah,
this is not about money. This is about people. So this is something. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, I'm going to say yes, it is. I'm going to argue with you on this one because I actually think that we have a duty to make good money.
You're right. You're right. I agree with you. No, I agree with you.
Because otherwise, why should it be only the organizations that do bad things that are profitable?
So true.
We need to make accessibility profitable, because then organizations are going to invest in it. And I'm not talking about pushing the cost onto individuals here. I'm talking about the organizations delivering accessible services should be charging a premium for good accessible services, not because they're charging the individuals with disabilities, but they're actually making a service that is by far and away better.
Do you charge for
and
privacy?
That will enable a lot of people.
Are you paying those people? Why would you not be paying people that are helping you include people with disabilities and accessibility? So no, you and I are definitely on the same page there. So thank you for bringing that up. If you're doing social good, it feels sometimes like society expects you to work for free, which, by the way, I have done a very long time and I'm tired of it. So because the work I do is important. So no, thank you for saying that. I totally agree. So thank you, Neil. All right. So one more time, it's Neil Milliken, Milliken, and you can find him on all the different social media places, and check out his flowers. He does some really beautiful, he does though. So, and thank you to Atos and Neil. You really have an amazing, amazing team. I think you're about to add a team member in the United States. So woohoo, maybe. I know there's a job opening. I didn't apply. I'll come and apply now, Neil. All right. Thank you, everyone. I will go off air to harass Neil, but thank you, Neil. And please check out past episodes I've done with him and his team. We'll make sure to provide those links too. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Human Potential at Work. To learn more about Rue Global Impact, visit rueglobal.com. And to learn more about Billion Strong, an identity and empowerment organization designed to bring the billions of voices of persons with disabilities together, you can join the global community and donate at billion-strong.org. That's billion-strong.org.